Welcome everybody to the Harwich Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing this Wednesday, July 25th, 2018. We've opened at 7 o'clock. We're here in the Griffin Meeting Room, Harwich Town Hall. We will hear the cases that are on the agenda, and at the appropriate time, I will give the public a chance to comment on these cases. I'm going to ask the board to introduce themselves, please.
James Hilliard.
Dean Hedersted.
Dave Ryer.
Al Donahue.
And Shayla Delaney, Secretary.
Okay, the applicants, we only have 4 members here tonight. That means any decision has to be granted unanimously. So, what we normally do in this situation, we will let you take a continuance if you want to wait until next month when hopefully we'll have 5 members, or you can hear the case tonight.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I believe the applicant in our matter is outside. Should I ask them to come in just to hear this?
Sure, they might as well hear it.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Crowell.
I know there's a continuance from last month,
Yes.
and I suspect that the ones after that are not going to take that long. If the continuance, if they anticipate that's going to be another long hearing again, any chance that we could be heard prior to them?
Just give me one second.
Attorney McLaughlin would know better than I would. I think.
Yeah,
It was going to take a long time.
but before that, let me let everybody know, for those that just came in, we only have 4 members present. Okay, that means every decision has to be unanimous. If you're out, for whatever your petition is that you're asking for, it's got to be a unanimous vote. One person votes against, and you don't get whatever it is you're looking. I guess in this case, they're all special permits tonight. So either you can go forward with the 4-person board if you feel comfortable, or you can ask for a continuance and come back next month when hopefully we will have 5 members present. If you have 5 members, you would need 4 positives, and if one person votes against, you would be granted, in this case, as I said, a special permit. So it's your choice. If anybody, to save time and not everybody sitting around here, if any applicant now wants to be continued, if you could stand up and identify yourself.
Mr. Chairman, David Reed for the first applicant, Visco.
Wait, let me first finish this.
Okay.
Does anybody want a continuance?
Well, I was going to just ask you 2
Right.
questions. One,
Let me hear the rest of them. I will deal with that case in just a second, sir. Okay, so we're going to go forward with the cases, 4-member board. Yes, case 2018-12.
yeah, I was going to ask you, what is the next date that you would have available? Do you know?
August 29th, I think,
The
is our
last
next
Wednesday in
meeting,
August,
I
yeah.
believe.
29. Okay. And may we have just a minute to go out and explain to my clients what the situation is with the voting, and they can make a decision as to whether they want to go forward tonight or not?
Yes. Okay, now here's the issue. It's not that simple. Because those that would be there, oh, that's right. If we just continue it, yeah, I guess as long, yes, we could do it. I'm sorry, go ahead. If they want to continue. In the meantime, while you're doing that, we're going to take the next case.
Thank you very much.
We're going to call 2018-16, please. And I'll have our clerk read the case and the correspondence.
Case 2018-16, Ernest G. and Linda Crabtree have applied for special permit to construct the 2nd floor addition above the detached garage to use as an accessory building with an apartment within the setbacks. The application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Section 325-51H, capital H, Table 1, Use Regulations, and Table 2, Area Regulations, as set forth in Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 6. The property is located at 176 Great Western Road, Map 37, Parcel N1, in the RL zoning district. And we have some correspondence.
If you could read it in, please.
First is the Town of Harwich, attention zoning board of appeal to the board regarding case 2018-12. As the owner of 29 Braddock Street and residing directly across the
So
street.
these are, I'm sorry, these are from the case that's out in the hall.
I'm sorry?
These are from the case that's out in the hall, because we moved them around.
This is, oh, I'm sorry, this
Yeah,
is 12. Oh, I apologize.
No worries.
Thank you,
So
thank
the
you.
two, one from conservation.
Yes,
one
yes,
from-
okay. Let me go back to case 2018-16. Ernest G. and Linda M. Crabtree applied for a special permit to construct a second-floor addition above a detached garage to use as an accessory building with an apartment within the setbacks. I've already read this. The application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, 325-51, capital H, Table 1, Use Regulations, and Table 2, Area Regulations, is set forth on Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 6, property located at 176 Great Western Road, map 37, parcel N1, in the RL zoning district. And we have two pieces of correspondence, one to the building department. This is from you, Shay.
It's just read from the bottom,
Yes.
the very
There will
bottom.
be a meeting
Yep, the very bottom.
review by the Conservation Department. Please note the following concerns by Conservation. 2/18/16 received conservation approval, no expansion of footprint. Now, the second piece of correspondence is to the Zoning Board of Appeal from Megan Eldridge, Health Director. I received the application for a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals for the project at 176 Great Western Road. The Board of Health approved variances on June 13th, 2017 for a second-floor addition with bedroom, bath, and wet bar with the following conditions. 1, the dwelling shall be restricted to a total of 5 bedrooms as submitted on the February 28th, 2017 plan prepared by Reef Builders. 2, the septic system design flow will be for 550 gallons per day, no increase in flow, number of bedrooms, or square footage. 3, all other variances, orders of condition granted on March 8th, 2003 will remain in full force and effect. 4, record deed restriction as margin referenced and return a copy to the Health Department. However, the Board of Health did not approve of an apartment with a kitchen. The floor plan provided by the Board of Health included a wet bar but not a kitchen. No floor plan was provided with the ZBA application. In order to comply with Title V, a 2-compartment septic tank or 2 septic tanks in the series is required for septic systems serving multiple dwelling units. A revision of the septic plan is required prior to the building permit sign-off.
That's the
That's it.
correspondence. If you
Yes,
could
that's
identify
correspondence.
yourself, sir, please.
Hi, good evening. My name's Ernest Crabtree, the applicant. I've submitted a letter that details our response to the 3 areas that were mentioned earlier with respect to the application that we filed for a special permit. And if you like, we can review those.
Well, before you go on, at least in my packet, there were no building plans, just a site plan. Do we have any building plans to show what we're doing? Do you have building plans?
No. I have none. Site plan only.
I have a site plan, but no building
We have
plans.
building plans that we submitted with it. Can I just take two?
Good building plans right there.
I have copies here. If you'd like to hear them, I could show you these.
Well, I don't see how we can rule on your application unless we have building plans to take a look at and see what you're doing, frankly.
That's fine. When I submitted the application, I provided everything that I was instructed that you would need for this hearing tonight.
Took them and handed them out.
Did you provide building plans with your application?
I don't recall if I did or not. Again, I can go back through the application if you like. It asked for a certified plot plan, it asked for a butters list, check made payable to Harwich, typewritten narrative explaining the process in the original application. There was nothing on here with respect to a building plan.
Well, it's in our rules and regulations, and it's your obligation to review those if you're gonna file an application. So what I'd like to do is, I think, continue this case, gentlemen. I don't see how we can go forward without building plans. So I'll
Agree.
make a motion to continue this case until 7 o'clock on August 29th, 2018, which is, Chair, correct me, I think that's our next meeting date.
Yes. So,
I second that motion.
Well, no, I wasn't making a motion, I'll
Oh.
accept the motion.
I'll make a motion that we continue this 2/18/16 to the next hearing, which is August 29th.
At
7 o'clock?
PM. Yeah, we'll put it on the first case. Dave, you wanna second that one?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Right, and on the application, Mr. Donahue just pointed out, there is a requirement, building plans, on the scale, floor layout. Because without that, we have no idea what you're
Granted.
proposing for
Right,
us.
understood.
So
All right.
we will put you on next month.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so. 2018-12, what's the decision on that? I just want to see what their decision is, Attorney Kroll.
Yes, we will go forward tonight. And as you probably saw in an email from me earlier, we are still waiting for Mr. Moore to arrive, and so if you want to take other matters first, that's perfectly all right with us.
Perfect.
In fact, it's
That works
desirable.
out great. We will take case 2018-17. Mr.
Okay.
Hilliard could read it for us, please.
2018-17, Kevin L. and Nancy K. O'Shea, through their agent, Attorney William Kroll, have applied for a special permit or in the alternative, a variance to raise and reconstruct their pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling. The application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Section 325, Table 2, Area Regulations as set forth in Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 6. Property is located at 11 Rabbit Run, map 4, parcel S1-32, in the RH1 zoning district. And, Mr. Chairman, we have one piece of correspondence to the Zoning Board of Appeals, case number 2018-17. I have reviewed the application for special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeal for the project at 11 Rabbit Run. A passing Title V system inspection is required prior to building permit application approval. A revised floor plan is required to show the elimination of the fifth bedroom labeled as unfinished storage. If the fifth bedroom would like to be kept, a septic upgrade is required. No variance in Title V or the local regulations will be granted for an increase in design flow from 4 bedrooms to 5. Should a septic system designed for 5 bedrooms not comply, the dwelling floor plans will need to be revised to comply with the maximum of 4 bedrooms. It's from Megan Eldridge, House Director of Harwich.
Okay, Attorney Kroll, if you could
One-
identify yourself. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, I'm
Another
done.
piece?
I'm done.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney William Kroll from Harwichport. I have seated with me Mark McGowan from MJM Associates, who is proposing to be the builder of the property in question, of the new single-family residence in question. The owners could not be here tonight. The property is located a little bit north of Shore Road in West Harwich, as shown on the assessors map that I submitted with the petition, and it's located at 11 Rabbit Run. I also submitted a certified plot plan by Moran Associates dated June 11, 2018, which indicates in the dashed lines the footprint of the existing dwelling. And the petitioners are seeking to demolish and replace, and the heavier, darker lines are is the outline of the proposed dwelling and deck. Pretty much on the same, in the same location. And you'll see a grid at the top of the plan by Moran. And just in walking through that briefly, the existing dwelling is more than 25 feet from Rabbit Run. It's 27.2. The proposed dwelling would be further back at 29.2, so it would be compliant with the 25-foot setback requirement. In the rear, the existing dwelling is 35.4. The proposed dwelling would be 46.3, well beyond the 20-foot setback requirement. So front and rear are compliant. The sideline setback on the west side would remain the same, different location of the corner of the existing dwelling and proposed dwelling, but still the same distance, 12.9 feet from the lot line. On the east side, it would go down by 9/10 of a foot, from 18.9 to 18. It's supposed to be 20 feet, so we're a pre-existing non-conforming situation under the Gale case there, and we're intensifying an existing non-conforming setback by coming a 9/10 of a foot closer to the lot line due to the configuration of the house. The building coverage existing is 14.1%. It would increase slightly to 16.8%, but still well below the 30% maximum. And site coverage 28.8, increasing a little bit to 30% even, still well below the 35% maximum. So we have a pre-existing non-conforming dwelling as to the east boundary and the west boundary, and we're increasing or intensifying the nonconformity slightly on the easterly boundary. As for the building plans, you see the proposed building plans that we submitted, going from one story to 1.5 stories. The existing building had 4 bedrooms on the first floor. The proposed dwelling will have a guest bedroom on the first floor and a master bedroom and 2 other additional bedrooms on the second floor. The area above the garage on Plan A2 says unfinished storage. That's the item in the area in question mentioned by Ms. Eldridge, the health director. The builder and the owner will do whatever it takes to make the Board of Health happy in this situation, so that that's not considered a 5th bedroom. But that's a Board of Health issue, not a Board of Appeals issue. And that could be accomplished, for example, by removing the door at the end of the hallway, or increasing, as she says, the septic system from 4 bedrooms to 5-bedroom capacity. We will be compliant with the Board of Health requirements, because we can't get a building permit without them weighing in and saying that we're okay. I also submitted a copy of the denial letter, so-called, by the building commissioner, indicating that he denied the building permit application, referred the case to the Board of Appeals because we don't meet the 20-foot setback requirements, and we're here under the Gale case, as I mentioned earlier. So we're asking the board to grant a special permit this evening on the grounds that the proposed new dwelling would not constitute a substantial detriment to the entire neighborhood, as it will remain a single-family dwelling, and there would be no substantial increase in traffic, noise, odors, fumes, congestion, or the like. Would ask that the board grant the special permit this evening. Thank you.
Mr. Hilliard.
I have no questions.
Mr. Hedersted.
I have no questions as to what you're doing. I only have a question is, how do we approve it without having contingency based upon the fact that it has to go through one more one more step before it becomes active.
Board of Health.
Board
They
of Health.
won't get their building permit and their plans approved, which the Board of Health notes in their own letter there.
So we can add that.
We can add it, I think Attorney Kroll made the point
I
last
understand,
time
but
that we don't have to.
I understand, that's his responsibility.
I have no responsibility, I mean, no concerns one way or the other, because whether we add it or not, they still have to do it.
Right.
Because they can't get their building.
Other than that, I have no
the
other
plans.
questions. Nothing?
The only thing I would know, I think it meets the Gale case and 32554 for the issuance of a special, or the granting of a special permit. I do think, though, we need to have our restriction of demolition and construction, because boy, it's tight down there. And I don't know how that monster one down the street is
Oh, yeah.
going now. That
It-
they had
Well,
trucks
if I can
everywhere.
interject, is that I'm the next door neighbor, and I'm going to be doing the building. We're actually, the neighborhood is going to be, because we're going to have 2 second floors on two of the other houses, this one. So the only ones that are going to really be out of commission is my dear mother, who is 90 years old, and she doesn't drive or anything else, so she's in the house, and it's going to be basically my wife and I. So, I mean, the cul-de-sac this winter is going to be filled with construction, basically.
And that's okay.
We kind of planned it that way.
Right, our restriction really is only from June 30 to Labor Day.
Yeah.
This year and next year.
Yeah, this won't start up until mid-September,
Right.
because thing is, I planned it that way, because thing is, I said, no, you don't want to deal with and have to, be a problem to the neighbors or anything.
Well, exactly, and that other one, that monster thing going in.
Oh,
down.
yeah.
Gee, I don't know,
Yeah,
is that,
yeah.
is that still
I'm
Harwich?
I'm biting a little hard on that myself.
It's
because
Harwich, right? That's
It's
still
it's
Harwich.
in West Harwich, right in the corner of the
Yeah.
Pleasant and Shore. Yeah, that's,
They had vehicles everywhere.
yeah. No, and on top of it is that we have plenty of room on each and everybody's property down there to pull vehicles up and, even
Well,
get
during
them
the
off.
winter, it's a ghost town, so then
Exactly.
you'll be fine down there. Mr. Donahue?
I have no questions. Just take care of your mother's property.
Okay,
You
would
got it.
anyone in the public like to speak to this case, either for or against? Hearing nothing, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Second for Mr. Donahue. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. I'll entertain a motion in the case.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, case 2018-17. The board hereby grants a special permit to Kevin L. and Nancy K. O'Shea, a special permit to raise and reconstruct their pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling. The application was made pursuant to the Town of Harwich 325 Table 2, area regulations set forth in MGL Chapter 40A, Section 6. The property is located at 11 Rabbit Run, Map 4, Parcel S1-32 in the RH-1 zoning district. The board finds that this particular application, we find that there is no new nonconformity, and there will be no new resulting detriment to the neighborhood. However, because of the property's location and the restricted area for parking, et cetera, there'll be no major external construction during the period 6/30/2018 through 6/30 through 1 September 2018 or 2019, nor can there be any significant landscaping done during that same period.
Would you add demolition?
And, pardon?
And no demolition?
Well, major reconstruction, I guess that would include
Okay.
demolition.
Okay.
And the application contains, I guess these are drawings A1 through and including A4, guess maybe A5, hold on a second. Oh, A4, EX1, EX2, and I believe there is a there a,
Yeah, site plan. Here it is.
is there a site plan? I've got it, yes. I've got a site plan, which is by Moran Engineering, and is dated 6/1/2018.
6/11, Mr. Head.
6/11.
Also, we generally say Labor Day and not September 1st, because Labor Day can be a later date.
June said June 30 and September 1. So you want to make it Labor Day instead?
I don't care. Make it Labor Day.
Labor Day it is. Could we have a second, please?
Second.
Mr. Hilliard, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Special permit granted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, case 2018-18. No, let me stamp these in first.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hilliard.
Case 2018-18, Jane C. Bird, through her agent Russell Bassett, has applied for special permit to finish the second floor level, adding habitable space onto an pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling. Application is pursuant to the code of the town of Harwich, Section 325, Table 2, Area Regulations as set forth in MGL, Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 6. The property is located at 4 Carriage Lane, map 53, parcel G4, in the RR zoning district. And there is two pieces of correspondence, Mr. Chairman. From the Board of Health, case 2018-18. I have reviewed the application for special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals for the project at 4 Carriage Lane. The septic system built in 2005 was designed for a maximum 4 bedrooms. This property is located in a nitrogen-sensitive area and is restricted to this maximum of 4 bedrooms. I unfortunately cannot determine compliance based on the lack of a floor plan, and limited information is provided.
There's just one piece, Mr. Hilliard.
I have the same, yeah. Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Peter Farber, and I'm a lawyer from Chatham. With me this evening is the prospective builder, Russ Bassett, and the owner of the property, Jane Bird, is in the second row. Obviously, I heard the comments of the chair regarding building plans, and we did not file building plans with the original application because we didn't think they were necessary for reasons I'll explain. But I do have the plans for the house, the interior of the house. There are no changes to the exterior, any part of the exterior. So with the board's permission, I would at least submit them so the file would have those, and I can explain further what is being proposed.
I don't know, do we want to proceed on that basis, or do we want to have them do a formal submission of the plans as we
The plan has
requested?
to be approved by the people who are saying they don't have it. We can't take it.
I sort of feel the same way. I mean, that's what we sent the prior applicant
Yeah.
back for, because I
Being
understand you
consistent.
could show it to them now, but we're sitting here, we haven't had a chance to really look at them and think about them, which we like to do before the hearing.
Could I just explain a little bit what the application is?
Sure.
And maybe you'll see it a little differently.
Okay.
The existing home was built in 1970, 70 or 73, I think it was, 73. And there are photographs of the existing home. It's a very standard home. The first floor, a walkout basement, and a second floor that has a finished bedroom, a finished bath, and it has a room that's been used for storage, that if you were to go into it, you would just see the rafters coming down and the insulation and the plywood floor. So the The building permit application was simply to show the existing condition and then seeking a permit to put sheet rock up, trim out the windows, put a floor down, that's it. So the building plans really don't show anything more than what I'm saying. There's nothing to show other than by writing in sheet rock to be applied to underside of rafters. Floor,
You're gonna cut in a window, I guess.
no, the window's already there.
Oh, the window's there.
Yeah, there's absolutely no changes to the exterior of the house.
Okay, let's see what you have.
Okay. So there are 3 plans here, sketches, and they were done in 2005 when the bathroom was added on the 2nd floor. So the first plan shows the existing layout of rooms on the 1st floor. The second shows the second sketch plan shows the 2nd floor, and you'll see that it says new bathroom. And then to the left is the storage area that is the subject of tonight's hearing. And then the 3rd sketch is the basement. And so the only one that's even pertinent tonight.
Right, it's the second
tonight.
one. I don't see how
those
we can grant a special permit. I mean, all it says is storage. We have no dimensions, there's nothing there.
Is that a stamped plan? I haven't seen it yet.
Yes, it was stamped by the building department.
No, I'm sorry, I meant a stamped plan by an engineer or an
It's a
architect.
sketch.
No, it's just a sketch.
Don't we require stamped?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to continue this case to our next meeting. You're gonna have to get us a real plan.
Okay, we're not seeking a special permit tonight, other than in the alternative, just so. We're really looking at the building, asking the board to review the building inspector's decision that finishing off this existing interior space would require a special permit. Our position is that it does not, because there's no changes to the exterior of the house. There's no extension, there's no dormers, we're not raising the roof, there's no additions to the footprint, nothing. And so the simple issue is finishing off a room in one's house. Can that be done as a matter of right from a zoning perspective? And I think if you look at my application, I cite Chapter 40A, Section 3, which is entitled Limitations on the Subject Matter of Zoning Ordinances. I have extra copies with me. And the second paragraph, first sentence, says, no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall regulate or restrict the interior area of a single-family residential building. And so
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so what we're saying is simply this, that, and of course, the Harwich bylaw cannot do what the state law says cannot be done. So what we're arguing is that under the Harwich bylaw, no matter how you would interpret it, it cannot regulate under zoning the use or the of interior space in a house, or those things in the interior that require only a Board of Health permit or a building permit. In this case, it's a building permit because there's no additional. We do have to keep the 4 bedrooms. We can allow a 5th bedroom on the house, but.
But you are increasing the habitable floor area.
Well, that's the issue. And I went to the dictionary definitions of what that means, habitable, and universally, it's defined as, well, habitable area is the gross floor area of an occupied dwelling, not including an unfinished basement, a crawl space, or a garage, because people don't live in those areas. Habitable floor area, which is close to what the town has in its bylaw, that term, is floor area used for living purposes, usually having access to heat, plumbing, and electricity. It includes hallways, restrooms, closets, storage areas, and other areas within a building. So again, it's the area that's occupied by people in the way that we're normally used to doing so. And it's heated, has plumbing available, electricity, but includes hallways and restrooms and closets and storage areas. So in the case of Ms. Bird's house, the storage area is already there. It's considered habitable area. It receives heat, it has electricity. The only thing that's going to be added is the sheetrock and a finished floor is essentially it. So we're not increasing habitable area, it's already habitable area.
Is it currently used for human occupancy?
It actually is. Her grandchildren, when they come from the summer, that's where they sleep. They throw down some some sleeping bags and mattresses, and that's where they sleep.
You would agree that, in some respect, you're changing the use of this house as opposed to, there's no structural change, but there's a use change. You're gonna make this into a bedroom, or what is it gonna be made into?
Yeah, a bedroom.
A bedroom.
Yes, question. But that's residential, it's residential use, just like,
No, I understand that. I'm just trying to understand the distinction. We're not talking about dimensional issues here. We're talking about use issues. It's a non-conforming structure, and now we're gonna use it, that so-called habitable area. I mean, we can go back and forth on the definition, but right now it's not inhabited on a regular basis. It's not finished, and the walls, the ceilings aren't finished.
I don't see that as being within any conceivable definition. I mean, we all have storage in our homes, so.
Excuse me, the State Building Code, 780 CMR 1202 definitions defines habitable space.
Okay,
Space in a structure for living, sleeping, eating, or cooking. Bathrooms, toilet compartments, closets, halls, storage, or utility spaces in similar areas are not considered habitable spaces.
there you go.
So I would argue that the storage area is not habitable under this definition, and you're making it habitable by the changes you want to make to put it into a bedroom.
All right.
So I think you need a special permit. It's the way you're increasing the habitable floor area,
Okay.
and thereby increasing the nonconformity, and I think you need a special permit.
All right.
I'm sorry, Mr. Donahue had a comment. I'm sorry, yeah, respond.
Well, I was saying, I think that was the building inspector's opinion, so certainly he had a basis for making that opinion. And rather than, we would not seek necessarily to overturn that decision then, because it has some logic, obviously, the state building code. So then we'd be seeking a special permit and finding no substantial detriment to the neighborhood, because, I mean, there's no changes to the home. It's the same home.
And I think the only thing I started to say was I'm on board with all of that, but I think you need to give us a plan before we can make a substantive ruling on the special permit.
Right.
Mr. Donahue?
I hadn't seen the plan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to see it.
Yes.
And it's the second page, Mr. Donahue.
Yeah, I think that's,
The second
it's open to that, but I guess what I'd like to see is a regular, plan showing us dimensions, and then what it's gonna look like, show where the window is, and,
All right.
then we'd have a basis to come back and take a look and make a ruling. I mean, I don't see that there's an issue in granting a special permit, but I'm not prepared to grant one until we see what it is. It's gonna look like when you're done. Because this is just giving you a blank check to do whatever. I know what you represented, but I want to see it so we can stamp it in,
Okay,
put it in the file, and then the building permit will be issued against that plan.
I understand.
Mr. Chairman, I believe it's required that it be a certified, stamped plan, if I'm not mistaken, as opposed to,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, this would not be adequate.
Okay.
We've gotten away from them.
The only thing I was gonna say, you don't mean by an architect? I mean, certainly the builder can go and, as he does often for plans, and,
It doesn't necessarily have to be
Well-
stamped, I think, but where's our last case showing the building plan?
You want a professionally drawn plan.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
Okay.
basically it. You want a professionally drawn plan.
Yes.
That's
because
it.
we'll be going by the
The
dimensions.
draftsman draws a plan that you can see, that's what they're
Exactly,
doing.
exactly right, yes. And
Okay.
that way we can,
Just that room.
look at it, and if it's granted, I can stamp it in,
I
it goes
understand.
into the
Like
file.
this.
Yes.
okay.
My only question is with regard to the septic system, going from 3-bedroom to 4-bedroom.
No, it's already 4-bedroom septic. That was
4-bedroom
approved. That, actually, it might show that on that sketch. But the Board of Health is correct. There is a room in the basement at this point in time that could be considered a bedroom because it has a door on it. And so the Board of Health, Mr. Bassett spoke to the Board of Health agent, and she said if the approval is given for the bedroom up in the second floor, then that room down below, you have to remove the door and keep it open to what, is 4 feet or 5 feet? 5 feet. So that will be done.
Okay, I'd like to have a motion to continue this case as the second case on August 29th, 2018.
So move.
Second.
Second, Mr. Donahue. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank
All
you
right,
very
so
much.
sorry, but we just have to
No,
have
I
the
understand.
plan.
I understand.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so now.
Okay, case 2018-12, are we prepared to go ahead at this point?
Yes.
Mr. Moore is on his way, but we'll go ahead without him.
Sure.
This is the
Case 20-1812.
Just before we read it to the applicant, on the panel at our last meeting, Ms. Mayhew was one of the voting members. She's not here tonight. I was at that meeting. I heard all of the testimony and evidence, so I'm qualified to vote on it, and I will be voting tonight. And we have the four of us, if you prepare to go ahead on that basis. Mr. Hilliard, read us the
Thank you.
basic, please.
Bruno Visco, trustee, et al., and others, and Sandy Conroy, trustee, through their agent Thomas A. Moore, have applied for a special permit to construct a 2-story addition onto a pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling. The application is pursuant to the code of the town of Harwich, section 325-54, and table 2, area regulations as set forth, Mass General Laws, chapter 48, section 6. Property is located at 34 Braddock Street, map 14, parcel B 18-0, in RH-1 zoning district. We have 3 pieces of correspondence. The first is from Edward A. Brady at 29 Braddock Street regarding case number 2018-12, special permit request from Bruno Visco, as the owner of 29 Braddock Street and residing directly across the street from the Visco residence. I have, quote, "no issue," end quote, to the future construction of a second-story addition to the existing building. I wish them the best in their future to improve their property. Thank you, Edward A. Brady, 29 Braddock Street. The second piece of correspondence to the Harwich Zoning Board of Appeal, Ray, case 2018-12, 34 Braddock Street. Dear Board of Appeals, please be advised that as neighbor of the Visco family, we have no objection to their hopes of having their bedrooms built on the second floor within the footprint of their existing ranch home. This lovely family is an asset to Braddock Street, and we are certain any alterations to their home will be in good taste and considerate of their neighbors. Respectfully, Robert and Mary Borgatti, 46 Braddock Street. From Mashadam at Comcast.net, dated July 16, 2018. To the Harwich, Mass. Board of Appeals Planning Department. It has come to our attention that an appeal to the Planning Board for altering an existing home owned by the Crowley and Visco families on Braddock Street has been made. We own the home at 13 Braddock Street and are in the Braddock Homeowners Association together. We have no opinion regarding this appeal and/or permit, as it will not impact us in any way. Sincerely, Mark and Allison Michaud. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. You could introduce yourself, sir, and for the record.
Thank you,
the
Mr.
applicant.
Chairman. Attorney David Reed for the applicant, Bruno Visco and his family. This is Mr. Visco here to my right. Several other members of the family are also in the audience. As you've indicated, this hearing began on June 27th, and in fact, you held a fairly extensive hearing at that time. I was not present. All of you, I know, were. At the end of that hearing, you discussed the fact that the applicant had made changes to their plans at the very last minute and only presented those to you and, for that matter, to the neighbors in the audience on that evening after the start of the hearing. And so, at least for that reason, you asked it to be continued through to tonight so that you and the neighbors and others could consider the new plans and whether any additional changes were appropriate. I was then consulted after that hearing. I was not present that evening, but I have gone back and viewed your video. We have forwarded copies of the plans to the McCourt's attorney, and they're the property that is the closest to the proposed addition. I've also sent emails to all of the other neighbors who had corresponded with you prior to or including up to the last hearing. I've not heard back from any of them other than the McCourt's attorney, Mr. McLaughlin, who is here this evening and I presume intends to address you. Because you've all heard this all once, I will not go back and repeat everything that you've already considered. I would like to just sort of catch up to where you left off and then get to respond to a few points of questions that both the board members raised and the audience raised at the last hearing. I have mounted on the board here, just for easy of reference, the two plans. They're the plan number A2, which is the facade of the building facing the concerned neighbors, and the floor plans of the second floor. The only one, the first one is dated April 23rd. The one that you received on June 27th is dated June 27th, and that is the operative plan before you this evening. But I present them both back to you just for purposes of comparison, to bring you up to the changes that were made that evening. Thomas Moore is the designer of the building for the property owners. When he learned of the letters that you had received, he attempted to address as best he could in the design of the building some of their concerns. And while the facades facing the two closest neighbors look relatively unchanged, there are a few minor changes. But the major changes are inside, and Mr. Moore sort of went through that with you last time. But since the concern from the neighbors was first and foremost the visibility of their backyards from these new second-story windows, he reversed most of the interior layout of the second story. And he took the bedroom areas where people are most likely to congregate and be looking out of their windows and put them on the west side of the house. So they're now looking out over the Sea Grill, the restaurant in the back, rather than towards the neighbors to the east. So that now, the windows on the second story that you see in the revised plan, the majority of them are either in closets or in bathrooms, not in areas where people would tend to congregate and be looking out their windows. The leftmost two windows are in a bedroom. One of them is a very small window that is located on the inset portion of that facade. The center two windows, again on the second floor, which is the area of most concern, was a sitting room at the top of the stairs. You can see that from the floor plans. It's now been again flipped, and that is now a laundry room, not an area where people would tend to congregate and look out their windows. So we've done what we think we can to try and eliminate the functional concern of the neighbors, and that is a lack of privacy that they currently feel they enjoy by not having rooms that look out over their backyard and their deck and an outside shower. There was also, just not to forget one of the discussions that you had, there was some discussion with one of your members about the first floor bedroom on the left-hand side of the existing house, as to whether that in fact had been eliminated as a bedroom and that this would indeed be a three-bedroom home when finished if you approve the special permit. You should have received by now a memorandum from the health agent indicating that they have reviewed the revised plans and in fact agree that it is a three-bedroom home. Mr. Chairman, you're shaking your head as if I gather you have not received that.
Correct.
Okay.
I haven't gotten that either.
May I?
Yes.
We received this memorandum from the
Thank
health agent indicating that they had in fact reviewed the most recent plans and are satisfied that the changes that were made effectively eliminate that present area from being counted as a bedroom, and it will in fact remain a three-bedroom home from their perspective. Now, to the merits of the request. This is a request for a special permit to extend and alter a pre-existing non-conforming single-family home. The standard, as you know all too well, is whether or not the proposed alterations or additions would be substantially more detrimental to this neighborhood. In order to make that analysis, I think you always tend to start by looking at what the neighborhood is. As you indicated in your introduction from the clerk, this is in fact an RH1 neighborhood, a high-density neighborhood. And I note that particularly because one of the site plans said it was an RM zone, which it is not. The most significant distinction between that is that in RH1 zone, the lot coverage allowance is 30% of the lot, not 20%. And as Mr. Moore presented to you last time, the proposed additions and alterations here will result in a net of approximately 24% building coverage, well within the 30% allowance.
This should be in there.
The locus itself is 10,012 square feet in area. And I will grant you, if you look simply at the site plan, it's an unusual arrangement, to say the least. It has very little frontage, and it has a long, wide, but narrow buildable area where the house sits, making it very difficult to conform to all the requirements. And indeed, it does have a setback of only 10.9 feet from the relevant portion of the house to the lot line behind the McCourt family property. To the lot line, not to their home. But your consideration of the lot and its relationship to the neighborhood isn't confined to any one dimension. I would also observe, as I'm sure you have, that the lot has over 50 feet of yard to its southerly abutter and over 30 feet of setback to its northerly abutter. And so even though it's a long, narrow lot and a house that has to stretch within it, it is still less than the 30% allowed coverage, only at 24% for the building. That's what's proposed. So it's unusual. It's got a limited side yard setback for that area closest to these neighbors. But it has elements of conformity that bring it within a reasonable margin for the district. As for the neighborhood, the McCourt property, who are the people closest to this addition, the people who have the most concern, have expressed the most concern for the second story. They're at 36 Braddock. If you're looking at the plan, that is the house in this corner here, to the right as you face our driveway. But their lot is 6,970 square feet, according to the assessor's records. I wasn't able to find a plan, so all I have is the assessor's records to go by. But that's about 3,000 square feet less than our lot. And yet it has a full two-story, four-bedroom, single-family home on it. And again, based upon the assessor's records, approximately a 26% building coverage as opposed to the 24% that we propose. So it's a smaller lot, and in some respects, more densely developed than what we are asking for. Now, it has the advantage, of course, of having a regular-shaped lot and therefore fitting more closely to what the bylaw anticipates. There's no doubt about that. But it is not disproportionate. Our lot is not disproportionate to it in terms of what its development potential and development actually is. Similarly, the Justy home, which is 32 Braddock, the the other home on the opposite side of our driveway, in front of to the left as you face our house, is only 7,380 square feet, another 2,600 or so less than our lot. It too is a two-story home with 3 bedrooms. And interestingly, in 2012, they came before you for a special permit to add on to their home, to add a sunroom and a deck, and a garage, and an extra bedroom above the garage. And the area where those additions were proposed and permitted and built is only approximately 10 feet from their side lot line. So it's not dissimilar in many respects from what we're proposing. And in fact, all of the people who wrote to you last time live on non-conforming, undersized lots. All of them have single-family homes of at least 3 bedrooms. And most of them have at least a partial second story. The single objection that probably was voiced the loudest last time from our neighbors was their perception that this will result in a lack of privacy in their backyards. I'm sure we would all like to be able to sit in our backyards, on our decks, to use our outdoor showers, without concern for our seeing or being seen by our neighbors. But that's not realistic, particularly in a dense neighborhood. None of the people who bought homes in this neighborhood were under the illusion they were buying country estates. This neighborhood is a close, relatively small lot neighborhood. We don't have that kind of privacy now. If I may just flip this around. I have copies of all of those.
Thank you.
Thank you. Will the microphone pick me up if I stand here a little bit?
Sure.
Our backyard is in the foreground here in this picture, the middle left. We too have an outside shower. But it is clearly visible from the second story of the Justy house. And the backyard area where they have their hammock and where they have their cookouts and their play areas is clearly visible from the neighbor's second-story home. These are the neighbors' homes, by the way. This is the Justy house, and this is the McCourt house, taken from the street. This is not a neighborhood of small, single-story, 1- and 2-bedroom cottages in which we propose to build a disproportionately large 2-story home. This is a neighborhood of 1- and 2-story homes, 1.5- and 2-story homes, most of which are of the same size in terms of occupancy as what we're proposing. Privacy is really not a right in terms of not being able to see or be seen by your neighbors. In fact, I couldn't find the word privacy in the zoning bylaw. But it's a factor, we all know that, because we're concerned about quality of life, enjoyment of our homes, and the value of our homes. But it's not something that has to remain static, and it's not something that is exclusive to the neighbors. We have the same rights, including the same rights to develop our property. Admittedly, when our neighbors purchased their homes, this lot had a 1-story home on it, as it does today. But did they really have the right to expect that that would never change? I submit that they did not. That certainly a change required your review, because all those homes are non-conforming. But there's no requirement that that remain static, that it remain as it was. They didn't purchase that right when they purchased their homes. I submit that this is a reasonable addition to this home. That this is reasonable in terms not only of the neighborhood, but also in terms of the expectations of the owners of the home. That it will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood It certainly will not be what the neighbors desire. It was not what they prefer. But that doesn't necessarily mean it is detrimental to the interests that the zoning bylaw is intended to protect. And because we suggest that this is a reasonable addition within the footprint of what's there already to more than half of the house, but not the entire house, certainly, that will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, and it is entitled to your consideration for the granting of a special permit. We certainly appreciate your sensitivity to the neighbor's concerns. But you also need to be sensitive to the owner's concerns and the owner's rights. And we believe that this is a reasonable addition that qualifies for the special permit. And unless you have any additional conditions or terms to add, we believe it qualifies as proposed and should be granted as requested. And that's what we would ask you to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hilliard, any questions?
What, the changes that you made, I may have just missed your specific,
To the plan itself?
yeah, let me just ask you the question. Yeah, just turn that around.
Yep.
You changed the interior from bedrooms to a closet?
No, they're the same basic number of rooms on the second floor.
No, but but the way the rooms are set up,
They are oriented now to the rear of the house instead of the front.
okay. So what is, again, you have a closet that's looking out at the rear, you have was a sitting room, and now it's a laundry?
Yep.
And then what is on the third area?
The area in the middle was a sitting area at the top of the
That's
stairs,
the
it's now
laundry.
a laundry room.
Okay,
This whole area was a bedroom, it is now a bathroom and closet.
okay,
This room was all a bedroom. It is now a bathroom here for one of the rooms, and a bedroom here for one of the front rooms and one of those small windows, excuse me, here in the corner.
okay.
So that's what's facing the neighbors now. That's what's proposed to face the neighbors.
Your definition of substantial detriment, does it go to the issue of whether or not someone either feels that someone is looking into their yard or knows that someone's looking into their yard? Or are we talking, in your opinion, substantial detriment is the structural, not the use, but the structure?
I think a detriment can arise from either. In this instance, I do not believe that simply the presence of people who can see over your fence into your yard is not sufficient to create a substantial detriment.
And these pictures that you showed us, these are the immediate abutters?
Yes,
So that there's an immediate abutter who has a a two-level home that actually looks into your client's backyard?
yes,
Okay.
yes. That is the Justy home right there.
Yeah.
At 32 Braddock.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Mr. Hedersted?
When you first started out with your comments, you mentioned something about you had issued some emails or some texts to the neighbors,
Yes,
and you also indicated that you got no response.
correct.
And your texts or emails were of what were you looking for, or what was the essence of what you were looking for in those messages?
I simply identified myself as the new attorney for the applicant, and welcomed them to get back to me if they had any additional comments or questions about the proposal, in particular about the new plans.
I
I
see.
did not advocate our position, I simply introduced myself, invited them to comment, which is what you asked them to do, or have the opportunity to do at the last hearing. You wanted neighbors to be able to see the new plan.
And no one came back to you with any comments?
No, sir. Other than Attorney McLaughlin, but who represents the McCourts. He and I have not discussed what they like or don't like about the plans. We provided them with the plans, and his comment back to me was, we will proceed with the board and see what happens.
All right, I only have one comment. I think you've gone probably above and beyond what's necessary or what's required. I think you went overboard, but you did that to try to appease the neighbors, which is, I think, is a wonderful thing to do. I'm surprised that the neighbors didn't come back with any suggestions on their part as what they could do about their own property. They obviously didn't. It works both ways. So as far as I'm concerned, and I must reiterate the fact that your position is no different than anybody else's in that neighborhood. It is obviously a risk when you have such small lots that if people they can look over their fences, they can get up on their roof if they want to, they can do all kinds of things to spy on somebody. That's the risk you have when you have such small quantities, small areas. You've done more than I think is reasonable under the circumstances. I'm just disappointed the neighbors didn't come back with something they could do to help the situation on their own property, like putting higher fences in their showers, putting a roof on their showers, moving their showers, or putting a awning on their property if they have any kind of improvement to limit access, visibility access to their property. Apparently, nobody made that. So as far as I'm concerned, I think you've done a marvelous job, and I think you've kept it within the realm of what we consider to be within the guidelines of our cases that we have here, and that it is not any more detrimental to the area than is already there. I'm gonna say it again. The words are that nonconformity will be of no resulting substantial detriment to the neighborhood. Substantial. And you've already got it in the neighborhood. No question about it. So you meet that criteria without question, in my mind. So I congratulate you for a good presentation and the work you've done to try to appease the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I essentially made the same comment last time, even though at the last meeting I wasn't going to vote. The test is substantial detriment to the neighborhood, not necessarily the adjoining neighbors. And we've had several cases over the years, more than several, and I sympathize with the neighbors, but that's not the standard. This is an area where many of the houses have been expanded over the years. South of 28, we have probably 2 or 3 cases a session where people are expanding lots, houses on non-conforming lots. It's just a fact of life. South of 28, very nice, desirable neighborhood. The house prices are going up as people expand, they're not going down. And I think that's one of the key components of whether or not there's a substantial detriment. And I think the plans are very attractive. It's gonna be a very attractive house to fit into the neighborhood. And I think it meets the standard required by the statute. I think it's consistent with the bylaws and with the statute, and certainly consistent with the Gale case. Mr. Donahue.
One of the unique things about Cape Cod is outdoor showers. Cape is known for it. And I'm not going to belabor my friend over here. He said very well. Outdoor showers are for the homeowner to figure out a way to get the privacy. I'm not absolutely certain that we have any right to an outdoor shower. But it is a Cape Cod thing. And it's known pretty much throughout this nation it is. Beyond that, Mr. Chairman, I have nothing more.
All right, would anyone in the public like to speak to this application? Yes, sir. If you could come to the podium and identify yourself, please.
Yes, my name's George McLaughlin, Mr. Chairman, and I represent the McCourt family. May I sit at the table, because I have a lot of exhibits I'd like to pass out. So if I could ask the court for that.
Okay, I have no objection.
Courtesy, I would appreciate that.
Excuse me, Mr. McLaughlin, when you do sit down, would you please introduce yourself again as it's on the record?
Certainly, Mr. Donahue. My name is George McLaughlin. I'm an attorney with McLaughlin Brothers Law Firm in Boston. In addition, I've spent about
50 years down here. I consider Harwich my second home. I have a house at 54 Harbor Road. I love Harwich and the McCourts. I'm very familiar with this area, and they have asked me to step in to represent them. I, too, was not here the last time, but I had the benefit of the TV presentation, which is really great. I mean, it's a wonderful tool, and I applaud you people for, you know, being technologically advanced and having that. I have some grave concerns here about things that have not been mentioned. I have studied all of the relevant documents. I have reviewed the history of the Visco house. And one thing that I heard Mr. Reed mention was the Visco's driveway. It is not their driveway. They don't own that. It is a right-of-way. The McCourts own one side, and the Justees own the other side. And I want to start by passing out to you a septic system plan for the Visco home dated May of 1993. And I think it's important for you to keep this property in context. This is a very small home that has no frontage, has zero frontage. What this shows is, if you look at the approximate floor plan layout, shows a garage, which, and then it shows 2 bedrooms. What happened after that is a fellow named Foster bought it. He turned it into a 3-bedroom home with the garage. And as I understand it, then the Viscos came and turned the garage into a bunkhouse. And one thing I want you to focus on very carefully is there's been a lot of shifting sands in the documents that have been filed before you people. 1 week it's a bedroom, and then the Board of Health says, hey, you only have a 3-bedroom permit there. Whoops, it's not a bedroom, it's a recreation room. You folks volunteer your time, you do an excellent job, and you are entitled, and you must demand that what is presented to you is honest and genuine documentation. You have not had this in this case, and I will prove that to you. And when you do not get honest documentation, the whole thing falls apart. If I was sitting in your shoes, and I'm going to point out a number of things to you this evening, I'd say, you know, how can I vote on this? Why am I devoting my time? Why am I wasting my time when people are putting this deceptive material before me? Now, one thing I want to point out to you is, and these are their filings, not my filings, these are their filings. You received a plan. It was filed on April, well, it's dated April 10th. It was received by the board on May 24th. And I pass this out to you, and I ask you to note that their surveyor has filed a fraudulent survey with you, an inaccurate survey. It's inaccurate because it suggests that the long perpendicular portion there is owned by the Viscos. That's completely inaccurate. Okay, this is an inaccurate plan. I
Okay,
don't know whether.
Sir, let me just stop you. We do have a more current plan that was filed with us,
I have that too,
and it shows gravel driveway,
and that's inaccurate. And I'll prove that to you, Mr. Chairman.
okay? Are you gonna-
And I'm glad you pointed that out, sir, because at first, it's like when we start to deceive. At first,
Okay,
in their first plan, they don't say a driveway. But then someone must have said, hey, you have to have 2 parking spaces on your property in order to comply with the zoning bylaws in this town. As you know, you have to have 2 parking spaces on each single-family residential lot. I have the dimensions. I want to put that into evidence. They have no parking spaces. They have no frontage. Now, what I want to next show you is the plan that you were talking about, where they changed it to gravel driveway. Somebody put that in, and I think they put that in on June 4th of 2018. I think that's the
Right,
date
that's the
of that
plan.
plan.
Yes.
That's inaccurate. It's not a driveway, it's a right-of-way.
Well, I beg to differ. I mean, it's a driveway, a right-of-way is a legal constraint or construct. If they have an easement, a right-of-way easement, they have the right to use that.
That's correct.
could
But
call
that's not what I'm saying, Mr. Chairman. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, what
They
are you
have the
saying?
right, they have the right to go in and out. They don't have the right to park there. And when you talk about substantial
Do you have
detriment.
anything, do you have the copy of the easement that prohibits?
I have a copy of the deeds.
The easement itself?
There is no easement. I have a copy of the deeds. I'll walk you right through it.
You just said there was an easement.
No, I said there was a right-of-way.
Okay, it's a right-of-way.
Yeah.
Is there a
I
description
can,
or limitation?
I can walk you right through it and prove to you what's going on here. First of,
Stop right there.
That's not.
Please stop. Let me ask you a question. We're talking about somebody putting an addition to their house, and the people next door are complaining about the visibility into their property. That's all we've been hearing up until you came into this, into here. So what I'm trying to determine is, if that was the basis for all this discussion that we've been subject to over the last two days or 2 nights here.
one night, I think, not 2 nights.
They were here before. We had to continue this because of, wanted the neighbors to get together and figure out what to do because they were concerned about the structure and the visibility into their property. Nothing to do with parking their cars, nothing to do with how old or what their other plans were, etc. I understand what you're trying to do. I'm trying to understand, what does it have to do with the neighbors having concern about the people looking into their backyard from a 2-story house?
They have other concerns, okay? When we talk about substantial detriment to the neighborhood, privacy, as you know, is one issue. Another important issue is parking and traffic. You'll hear from the neighbors. They have a huge parking problem here. And they have a huge parking problem because what happens is Bank Street Beach fills up. So what happens is everyone comes into this neighborhood and tries to park. So there is a problem when they have guests come and visit. Now, as a result of Mr. Manning building his big property there in the middle of town, Ike's parking lot is gone where people used to park. And so people are coming in and parking in this neighborhood, and there is a huge parking problem, and you will hear from the neighbors about that parking problem.
Council, I need to interrupt you for a second. First off, the issue of parking was not been brought before us. They're not asking to increase or decrease the parking. The issue of parking has no relevance to this petition.
Total relevance. I completely
Well,
disagree.
I beg to differ with you.
Well,
What is there is there. There's either parking or there isn't. If the neighbors have a legitimate and a legal problem with the parking, this is not the place they take it. They take it to the building inspector and say, listen, they're violating something here, and it's either that they don't have enough parking or they're doing something. That's not something that we look at.
well, I respectfully disagree with you, because one of the things that the whole standard here is substantial detriment to the neighborhood, okay? So now we look at the neighborhood. Now, I have a case that I'll give you. This is a small lot that has no frontage. It doesn't have any frontage, okay?
I don't see
Well,
the relevancy to that on the issue before us.
Well, it's relevant because privacy is an issue. The reason we have setbacks, okay, we have setback laws. And the reason why we have those setback laws is because of privacy issues and aesthetic issues.
What's the
Okay,
privacy
but
issue?
nobody down here beats the setback issues on all 4 sides,
Well-
okay? That's the nature of south of 28, Counselor.
I,
And the fact that the applicant wants to put a 2nd story on this house is not gonna detriment, and not have a substantial detrimental impact on the parking in that neighborhood. The issue is the people, as you just said, at the Bank Street Beach.
No, we're going all over the place. You are interrupting me, and I understand, but if you'd allow me to
Okay,
get to...
but you know, it's getting on,
Well,
and
you...
we've heard a lot of
please,
these.
Please, I should be allowed. I feel like I'm being railroaded here. I mean, are you gonna allow me
Okay,
to...
but let's-
Are you gonna
let's-
allow me to present, or are you not gonna allow me to
Let's
present?
address substantial detriment to the neighborhood.
I'd like to address that.
I
And
think
if I
you're
could
throwing
address
a
it
lot of
uninterrupted, I'd
red
like
herrings out
that.
here, wasting our time,
Well,
quite frankly.
All right.
So present your case on why this is a substantial detriment to the neighborhood.
It's a substantial detriment to the neighborhood because if you look at their deed, they don't have any right to park where they are parking now, okay? They're parking in the right-of-way. And I want to show you some photographs of, they're not only parking cars, but they're parking boats in a right-of-way that they have no right to park in.
Is this a right-of-way exclusive to them?
No.
Oh,
It's not exclusive to
Someone
them.
else is using the right-of-way?
Yes, the McCourts own the right-of-way.
Okay.
And the Juicies own the right-of-way. So they're clogging up the right-of-way. And what you have to think about here is there are two families that own this house, okay? The Viscos, well, actually, there are four families that own the house, two families that occupy the house. The Viscos, two parents, and I believe 3 adult children. The Crowleys also occupy the house, two adults and 2 children. I think there's a 19-year-old and a 15-year-old. They're talking about putting in a 3-bedroom house. They have a 4-bedroom house now, and they're talking about reducing it to a 3-bedroom house. That makes no sense, okay? They have no parking. They have absolutely no parking. So what's gonna happen is, all of these people, the 9 people who are using that house, are gonna be having to park their cars on the street, and that's gonna have an extremely negative impact on the neighborhood. I wanna pass you the Crowleys, or rather the Viscos deed. And when you look at the Viscos deed, what it shows you is, it shows that the Viscos do not own what their surveyor inaccurately said to this board they did own, all right? And this is very important. This survey plan is inaccurate, and I want to show you why it's inaccurate. If you read with me, the Visco deed says it's 2 parcels. And it says, on the north, by land now formerly of M. Ann Jones and Janice C. Jones, 50 feet. So that's up here, if you could follow along, 50 feet up here, okay? And then it says, by land now formerly of Henry W. Bear's, 100 feet. And what that 100 feet is it's, we dealt with the 50 feet. The 100 feet is the 90 plus the 10-foot right-of-way, okay? Then the next description is by parcel 2 described below 50 feet. So now what it's doing is it's coming back across. And the last description is by land formerly of Mary O'Brien and now formerly of Nellie Massey. There is also conveyed a right-of-way 10 feet wide and about 100 feet long across the land formerly of Agnes M. Chase to a road called Braddock Street. The south line of this right-of-way was being an extension easterly of the south line of granted premises to said road. So it says they have a right-of-way in and out of Braddock Lane. They don't own that. They have a right-of-way out to Braddock Street. Now when you look at parcel 2, it says, also the land in Harwich, it said Harwich Board bounded and described as follows. On the south, so if you follow along with me, here's north, so here's the south, 50 feet. So it's talking about this portion. Then it says, by land formerly of Watson B. Kelly, 82 and 1300ths. And that's on the west, so that's this leg. Then it says, on the north by right-of-way 50 feet. So that's coming back to the right-of-way. And it says on the east, so this is the east side, by land now or formerly of Grace L. James, 79 and 97 100ths. So that's that 80 feet right here. My point is, their own deed shows that, and this is very important for the board to understand, they have no frontage. They have no frontage. They have no parking. There's a huge parking problem here, and all they have is a right-of-way, and they're illegally parking in the right-of-way, which, you know, unfortunately is about ready to stop. Now, I also give you a copy of the McCourt's deed and a copy of the Justy's deed. And the important thing about these deeds is the description. And I think really what we need, because I didn't mean this to turn into a seminar on titles and what have you, but I think you're entering a very sticky wicket here, and I think what we need to do is have a title opinion done. That's the McCourt's deed, and this is the Justy's deed.
Thank you.
And there's a paradigm of law called the derelict fee statute. And what the derelict fee statute stands for is, it stands for the proposition that you can't have derelict fees of land out there. Everybody's got to own something. Or every piece of land has to have an owner. And so when you abut of right-of-way, if in the description of the deed it says, like it does in the McCourt deed and like it does in the Justy deed, by the way, what that means is, that means that the people on either side own to the middle of the way. So their parking, they're gonna have to park someplace. We know there's 9 people using the property. And here are some photographs. These are all, you know, every weekend they have, it's like a used car lot down there. I mean, they have cars jammed in there. They have boats, they have trailers, they have wave runners jammed in there. So now, what happens if you allow them on this postage stamp lot to increase the mass and go up? You know, what's gonna happen is, all of these people are gonna have to park out on the street, and you'll hear from the neighbors, and what's already become a huge problem in this neighborhood is gonna get much worse, and it's within your control to control the situation. You know, as I say, the Viscos have a boy, I think, that's about 23, a girl who's 19, and another girl who's 15. The Crowleys have a boy who's about 27 and a daughter who's 25. And if you look at the plans that they have filed here, oh, and, well, before I move on to that, you know, I'm sure you folks are familiar with the parking guidelines in town. They have to have 2 parking spaces. There's no place for them to have parking spaces on their lot. They can't park in the right-of-way, and they can't park in the street. As a matter of fact, the problem down there has become so severe that your town has put up no parking signs. in the area, and people still park.
Interesting.
And, you know, I just urge you, oh, actually, I have it. Here's the no parking sign that's there. It's a huge problem with the neighborhood, huge problem with the police.
Where is this, in front of their house?
That is in front of the Juicy's house, and that's right at the end of the right-of-way.
Is that on Braddock Street?
That's on Braddock Street, yes. It's, to orient you on this plan, that sign is right about here.
Okay.
And you'll see in the photographs that I put in there, the Viscos and their visitors are parking right in front of the no parking sign. So there's no room for parking on the property. They can't get in there, and they're talking about expanding the use. Another concern I urge you to look at is this. When you look at the plans that you have before you, when they first filed their plan, and the first plans were filed, and you have them with you, on, I believe it was May 23rd of this year. Is the May 23rd plan available? Do you folks have that?
I do not have it. I've only got the current plans.
All right, well, let me just try, I know I have it here somewhere, if I could have a moment. The May 23rd plan, I could just have 2 minutes here. The May 23rd plan, the first plan shows 4 bedrooms. Now, as I say, you have the 2 parents who you think would have each their own bedroom staying there, and you have 5 pretty much adult children, a mixture of girls and boys, so that's who's staying in the 4th bedroom. But then what happens, and I know you've seen it, is the Board of Health sent you a memo and said, well, wait a second. You can't have a 4-bedroom house because you only have a 3-bedroom septic system. And so then what they did is they revised the plan and said that the existing bunk room, which they're still using to sleep in, they say, oh, no, 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 it's not an existing bunk room. It's an existing recreation room. What is happening there? I mean, it really seems as though they're playing games with you folks in filing these exhibits. Originally, in their application, their original plan, the existing plan, 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Then the second plan comes, and it's 3 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms, because, you know, in that plan, the existing bunk room became the existing recreational room. Then in the final plan, they say, oh no, we're just gonna have 3 bedrooms, but we're gonna have 5 bathrooms. Well, I just feel it's so obvious what's going on here, and you're in a very tough position. They're filing shifting plans with you. You know, there's a shell game going on here, and we all know what's going on here. They're hemmed in because they don't have any parking, they don't have any frontage, They only have a 3-bedroom septic system. So they admit to you, the most honest plan is the first plan, when they say we have 3 bedrooms and the bunk room's a 4th bedroom. That's an honest plan. So as they sit here today, they're in violation of your laws. But then they say, oh, forget that happened. The bunk room's a rec room. That's a rec room. And then they say, oh, forget it. We're just gonna have 3 bedrooms upstairs. So what's gonna happen? The parents are each gonna get a bedroom, and then they're gonna have 1 bedroom for the, 29 and 28-year-old girls and the 27-year-old boy and the 23-year-old boy and the teenagers. I mean, I have daughters. No problem with girls sharing a room, but I mean, when you have mature women and men sharing a room, it's just ridiculous. And now what they've done on their most recent plan is this. When you look at it, they say, oh no, don't worry about that rec room or bunk room or whatever it is. That's gonna be a rec room. We got our 3 bedrooms upstairs, but now let's look at the downstairs plan. What's going on in the downstairs plan is this. They have a great room. They have a den. They have a family room. But when you look at the family room and the den, the only thing they've done, the family room and the den both have full baths in them. The only thing they've done, look at the plans. I think this is very important. They have showers and they have baths in those 2 rooms. What they've done, though, quite cleverly is they've removed the doors, because in the definition of bedroom, privacy is a key thing. So what they've done is they've removed the doors and they've said, oh no, this is just another family room or a den, happens to have a full bathroom right off of it. And it makes no sense. You know what's gonna happen? If you people give them the green light, what they're gonna do is they're gonna go ahead, they're gonna build this, or they're gonna have to come back to you for a variance anyways, because they have no frontage, so they can't do anything without a variance from the frontage requirement. And the minute they get their certificate of occupancy, what's gonna happen is some carpenter's gonna show up in there, and he's gonna put a door in the family room, he's gonna put a door in the den, they pick up 2 bedrooms there, he's gonna put a door in the bunk room, so there's gonna be a 3rd bedroom. So it's gonna be a 6-bedroom house with all the attendant vehicles and boats and everything else in this small little neighborhood that's already overrun. So I just urge you, and in the strongest sense, to study those plans, to look at the shifting sands, and to see what's really going on here. And I urge you not to reward people who have come in here and tried to pull the wool over your eyes with a special permit. Didn't mean to be so long-winded, but I had a lot of ground to cover, and I thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Would anyone else in the public like to speak to this application?
I have a question.
Okay, wait, Mr. Hedersted.
For me?
No, not necessarily for you.
Okay, why don't you hold it till we
Okay.
have our board discussion?
All right.
I'm gonna talk to Jonathan about this.
How are you? So I'm John
Identify
Giusti.
yourself, please, sir, and your address also.
Yes, so I'm John Giusti. I'm here with my wife Lisa. We are at 32 Braddock,
Okay.
the abutter that's been mentioned a couple of times. I just wanted to kind of give you a quick background. So we did purchase our house in 2010 and made some extensive renovations to it after the fact, 2012, which I think Mr. Reed had mentioned. We did expand. It was an existing 2-story house that went from a 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, around 1,000 square feet, to a 3-bedroom house, 2.5 baths, and roughly 1,900 square feet. So that's kind of where we are today. I wanted to correct Mr. Reed in that it was an existing 2nd story, there was an existing garage, there was an existing porch, and it is no closer to the line next to our neighbors, the Walkers, than it was at that time. So I know there was a little bit of confusion around that. We bought the house as an investment, and we're clearly concerned about anything that can potentially impact that investment over time. So we do rent it most of the summer. although our long-term plan is to retire there and eventually turn it over to our children, as many folks in the neighborhood do. I want to pause for 1 second and just say that, because I feel like I need to, that we are very, very lucky in our neighborhood to have fantastic neighbors. The Walkers to our left, the Viscos and Crowleys to our right, the McCourts also further to our right, and frankly, the entire neighborhood. And so I don't want this to be instrued particularly by the Bruno or Tulia or Rich or Rita, that this is personal in any way, shape, or form, because we do consider them our friends, and we do enjoy seeing them and their families over the summer at the Cape. However, I do have some concerns that I felt necessary to bring forward. I was not available we were out on a vacation at the last meeting. I did watch the video so I understand fully the discussion after that meeting, and I think it was you who suggested that we get together and talk about that. So Bruno and I actually talked on the phone about our concerns, so I wanted to clarify that Mr. Reed's email that came on Monday of this week, I did not bother responding to because Bruno and I had talked personally about some of the concerns we had. So we did talk about that. I'm not saying we came to any conclusions, but I just wanted to be honest and forthright when I assume Bruno appreciated that. I just want to focus on one area, and that is an area that I know it seems like it came up tonight, but had I been at the last meeting, and I think had some of the other folks been at the last meeting, it would have come up, and that is simply this issue of parking. So I'm not going to get into the right-of-way and all that kind of stuff. I simply am concerned about the level and amount of cars in front of our house, in front of the McCourt's house, in general, down in that neighborhood. It is something that concerns me, and as pointed out in some of the plans, the driveway or the right-of-way runs along the left side or right side if you're looking at the house property. When we did the addition on our house, we made sure that we made allowance for 4 parking spots in our house, and we instruct our renters to always park in the driveway, do not park on the street, because we do not think that is something that is valuable, and it is frankly detrimental to the neighborhood. So what is my concern? It's very actually quite simple. With the size of the expansion and the significantly larger sleeping capacity, I'm simply concerned that parking is going to get worse. That's what I'm concerned about, both now and in the future, particularly if the house is sold or used as a rental property. Because knowing as renters ourselves or owning a rental property, the focus is not on how many bedrooms, it's on how many people that can sleep. And for example, we have a 3-bedroom house, but we say it can sleep 8 because it's 2, 2, and 4. And that is really what the capacity of the house is theoretically. Obviously, one's a bunk room for little kids. So it's not really about, to me, the amount of bedrooms. I am simply concerned about are we going to create a bigger problem than we have today with the amount of parking or lack of parking that we have as a result of this. Other than that, I have nothing else to add. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, when you talk about the parking issue, are you referring to generally the parking issue in your neighborhood, or are you suggesting that these petitioners, the petition will result in an inordinate amount of additional parking?
I'm simply
figure that parking issue out.
Yeah, no, I'm simply suggesting that, and I think this was mentioned by Mr. McLaughlin, or Attorney McLaughlin, that when you have a house that is that much bigger in size, more people are going to use it, and more people are going to arrive there, and more people are going to park there. If there was a way to resolve this parking thing, then that's great. I don't have that answer.
Is that your primary issue with the petition, is the parking?
That is my number one issue, and how that has a detrimental impact ultimately
All right.
on the investment value of that house. So.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Alfred Walker. My wife and I have owned the residence at 30 Braddock Lane since 1999, and we're in a butter as well. We abut a piece of the back of the Visco house, so we abut as well. Ours is a neighborhood of about 20 modest single-family homes south of Route 28, as you know, and west of Bank Street. Most of the homes have at least 3, if not 4, parking spaces, and ours, by the way, is fully conforming. Our house, we're not here as a non-conforming house that's asking for any particular favors. We've known the Viscos and the Crowley family since they purchased a house at 34 Braddock, and we consider them friends. However, we do have a couple of concerns, and some of them have been voiced today. One of them is not privacy, so I'm not going to hit you with the privacy issue. That, I think, was covered before. We're not quite that close where you can see we got trees and stuff around, so we're okay on that side. But the existing house was originally a 3-bedroom, 2 baths, and I think you've heard here today that that's substantially changed in a plot. So one of our concerns is that when we first got the plans, and we were not able to come the first time, we were not at home. When we first got the plans, we looked and said, okay, that look, and then they've changed. We didn't realize why they changed the names of the bunkhouse. We didn't understand that. So now we have the bunkhouse where the children or friends sleep, but also we know the house has no parking area, and they're using the right-of-way, which we know now is probably not quite copacetic, and it's not probably kosher. The addition and renovation purports to be a 3-bedroom, 5-bath, dining room, kitchen, several common areas, but on the first floor, what's now the master bedroom will be a family room. Well, it has a full bath and 2 closets. Certainly looks to me like a bedroom. And I think we've heard today, the bunk room is now called the rec room, which used to be a parking area. So, I mean, it's all connected somehow. And they took down the parking area, and they put up a bunk room years ago. Who did that? I don't know, whether it was done by the Viscos or was done before you. I don't know. But anyway, where that bunk room was, that was a parking area. They would go through the right-of-way and then park right next to the house. That's now gone. So we now have first floor, kitchen, dining room, 2 baths, a rec room, a sunroom, a great room, a den, and a family room. That's 6 common rooms. And I think we heard, too, from John Juicy, people are going to be staying there. So what we have, perhaps, is an increasing habitable area, which may be not as habitable before. And that, I think, will be detrimentally to the neighborhood. It's just a heck of a lot more people. And right now, it is a multiple family dwelling to begin with. So now we're going to throw, and I think we've heard this, some more children into the, or friends, into the mix. So, and also I think with the sleight of hand, and I think that our attorney mentioned that, or McLaughlin did, that this was done perhaps without us knowing it, and we suddenly got it, and if you look closely, it looked like the same plan, but it's actually not the same plan. So I think that the third issue, obviously, parking and the number of people that will be there, it's just too much. So in other words, why do we concern? What's bothersome to me? I think it's perhaps the resale value of the house, of our own house. Certainly this house, if it's increased and goes up higher with more people in it, it's certainly not going to help the value of our house. So at worst would stay flat and maybe go down a little bit. If anybody's looking at that, we've got a nice Cape Cod house, just, you know, a couple hundred feet from the downtown where we heard the Manning thing. So, I mean, it's a nice home, and we really like it. So the issue there becomes, too, a possible resale value, possible, if the title to that house changes, and you admit that they can make these changes to it, how many people could fit in that house if it becomes Airbnb or one of the others? If it gets to the hands of some of these people that like to not be there, but just rent it out all the time. We think that with the noise, with what a bunch of kids and stuff in that house could do, it's just too much. So how many bedrooms? Well, who knows? But what happens if it's sold? So we're concerned about the resale value, possibly of our own house, the value of our own house, and we're right next to it. We're in a butter. And so I'm just saying, I think a lot of these issues were presented tonight, and I'd like you to seriously consider them. Again, it's not a personal thing. We like the families. We like the Viscos. We like the Crowleys. We've been good friends for a long time. But these are still some of the issues we have.
And what's your address again, sir?
30.
30. Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Dan Carroll, 42 Braddock. My family at 42 Braddock has owned this property for 48 years. The first 8 years as seasonal residents, and the last 40-plus years as year-round residents. I'm probably going to voice some of the same concerns that have already been stated here, so I'm not going to take up a couple of minutes of your time. The Viscos and Crowleys have been good neighbors for almost 2 decades. My opposition to approval of their application of this board is not about them. My opposition is about the future of Braddock Street and what is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. If for any number of reasons they sell their property, they will leave, but the changes they make in this appeal to the board will remain. As Harwich Port has become more popular in recent years, real estate investors have bought properties to profit from a strong rental market, both in season and off season. Using Airbnb and other internet platforms, these investors will buy properties and rent them out like hotel units after adding bathrooms and bedrooms. Hence, more people. This has already happened 2 doors from me at 20 Braddock. They've added bedrooms and bathrooms. The detriment to the neighborhood occurs when changes made to the units internally allow for more sleeping areas and bathrooms. Another concern would be septic discharge and leaching into Nantucket Sound, which is only 800 feet away. Security becomes another issue. You have no idea who lives next door to you. I'm here 40 years year-round, so I can attest to that. Traffic increases and parking pressures will increase as well. Braddock Street already has 3 non-conforming motels next to the Sound, 800 feet south of the Visco Crowley property, and a new condo/retail project being completed a couple of hundred feet to the north. That's the big building in town that's being completed now at Route 28. Parking is a major issue. And I thank you for your time, and I urge you to deny the appeal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm Brian McCourt, in 36 Braddock, and again, I spoke last time, and again, want to echo the neighbors, the Viscos and the Crowleys have been very good neighbors, and it's not about the neighbors and the relationship with us. It's about, right now, detriment to the neighborhood. We did talk about privacy, and somehow it became one-dimensional that evening. I don't know why, but it did. I brought up a couple of things that were aside from privacy. Somehow they never made it to the notes of that last evening. But I do want to point out that parking is right now an issue. It's not what's going to be an issue. We're talking about becoming a bigger issue. Harwich Port is becoming more and more popular, and with the development downtown, there is already problems that have nothing to do with us. That's why some of the different no parking signs have even gone up in fines. I do want to point out, and I think you've been handed this, 2 other pictures that show the issues right now. And as I said, with an increased size of the house, can only get worse.
See, that's our front.
I have that.
Yeah, that's our front walk. So,
Oh, I see.
This is our
That's
front walk. That's our house. That's our front walk. That's a wheel
Okay, I get it.
and this is the driveway.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll do this over here. This is our front walk right here. So this is the wheel. You can just see that cement on our front walk. And that's parking right now, and that goes all the way around to the back of the house. That's the parking that's happening right now.
This is your park, this is your entranceway to your house?
It's the entranceway to our house.
And whose vehicles are these, just the public, or?
No, these are the Crowleys and Viscos or their friends or whatever. And this was taken by a neighbor that sent it to us. We weren't there. This was the parking. So that's our front walk. So you can see that is on the front walk of our house.
Excuse me, whose house is this?
That's the Juicy's. So this is the right-of-way. So these are the cars on the right-of-way. These, and again, this was taken by a neighbor and sent to us.
Okay, that's the juice. How do we know who owns these cars?
You don't. Well, you know, I got another picture. That's the same one, and we can run the,
Have you? That's my question.
I'm sorry?
Do we know who owns these cars, in fact?
No, but I will say that these are all theirs.
Okay, well, okay, I just want to know if in
Yeah.
fact you knew who owned them. We don't. Okay.
And then,
Oh.
and we'll give a photo of those guys too. And this is also showing that the,
Yep, I have
About,
that.
okay.
And is that the right of way there?
Yep.
Okay,
That's the right of way. So they have a picture.
okay.
So,
Yeah, I have them. Well, okay.
So that's just to illustrate the issue that's here now, and the fact that it can only get worse. And again, this was sent to us, not taken by us.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
May we just have a moment to see the photographs that you've been
Sure.
provided with? I guess these are
Yeah,
multiple.
those are them. That's what we have.
The two cars here, Brian. Are these two cars here? Is that what you're referencing?
Yes.
look, I said all the way through, I said, here's our front wall.
Yes. It's an enforcement issue.
Hmm?
Tire. I'm just showing it.
We don't go out here. So these are,
If they are, yeah.
those two cars are not registered to my family.
That's why I'd asked. We don't know who they belong to. I'm not accepting it from anything other than two cars.
If I,
Can I stand here?
come right here.
Sit here.
This is Mr. Amy Visco, one of the trustees.
I know, I get that.
Speak louder in there.
I do have a close-up of an introduce myself. That's not owned, but could it be a friend of theirs?
This gentleman is saying neither of those cars belong to him, so.
The question would be, could they be?
It's a traffic issue. I take it only with the fact that there are a lot of cars parked in your area and potentially on the right of way. Okay.
Mr. Chairman. can you
Okay, before we hear anything else, I mean, parking seems to be a paramount issue, and I know it is in the whole town of Harwich. I mean, it's in the paper every week. Is there any way we can get any parking, because we are entitled to put conditions on a permit if it's granted, some on-site parking off of the driveway? You've got 9.3 feet. Can we put a drive there with a gravel parking area on that 50-foot to get some cars down onto the property? You see what I'm saying, gentlemen, on the plan?
Oh, yes.
If they can get through that with a gravel, they could put a gravel parking area where they could turn around and come out.
I don't
Right in
know the
here.
answer,
Right in there.
Mr. Chairman, whether they can physically get a car in there or not.
A little more volume, please, sir.
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to your question. I'm not an engineer, and it looks to me like you ought to be able to get a car in there, but I don't know whether that's logistically possible, and if you get a car in, can you get it back out? I don't know that. The fact is, however, that from my client's perspective, the vehicles that are parked out in the street are not their vehicles and are not occupants of their house. They, in fact, complained to me early on that the parking in the street is a problem for them, but it's not their parking. I don't know if it's the tenants of either of our neighbors on either side, because they both rent and they both advertise their houses as for 8 people to occupy, or whether they are in fact the general public or people who are spilling over from the beach. But neither of those has anything to do with our proposed alteration of our home.
Okay, well, let me just explain where I'm coming from, and I'm not having this board get into whether or not you have the right to park in the right-of-way. If you guys want to litigate that, go to it. What I am concerned about, though, is if it were litigated and your client was not able to park, then they've got no parking spots. So I'm inclined to oppose a condition, if a special permit's granted, that they figure out a way to get at least 2-car parking on site. And they can figure out how to do it, and if they need to take off a corner of that room, then so be it. But anyway, I throw that, we'll discuss that, that's a board issue, but I'm just throwing it out, so you're not blindsided.
Right.
But if you're parking in the right-of-way now, and it's found at some point that you don't have that right, you're gonna have no parking then.
I understand. But what you have before you is a plan from a registered land surveyor who is of the opinion that we in fact own that strip of land.
Okay, I'm not,
I'm
this
not-
board
I'm asking you to
isn't
resolve it. I'm just,
qualified to make that
I understand that.
determination, and I appreciate council giving us the documents, but that's not our call, sir. We don't have that.
I understand that, Mr. Chairman, but they also have no frontage, so you can't grant them a special permit if
Well,
they
but
have no frontage.
They're non, we can't, because they're non-conforming.
Non-conforming.
They're non-conforming.
Excuse me, sir, would you mind getting back to that microphone so we can?
Oh, sure.
Well, wait, Attorney Reed is speaking. Let's
Yeah.
not,
All right.
let's not have a free-for-all. Let's just do it one at a time here. I'll give you a chance to respond, sir.
the property is in a trust, and there are 4 parts of the family that are involved in that trust. But the occupancy of this house, in terms of the family's use, is not proposed to change with this addition. 2 of those family members have homes elsewhere on the Cape, in Harwich and in Dennis, and never stay at this house. The parents of the 4 children don't live at this house. The occupancy is principally by 2 branches of the family, and that will continue as, in the future as it has in the past. We do not see a reason to believe that their occupancy will change the parking pattern in any way. If there is a problem with parking now, it's going to be the same tomorrow. And that's not the result of this special permit. I understand your concern, Mr. Chairman, and if you want to impose conditions that remain so, then that's fine. We understand that. But the real thrust of all the speakers' concerns are speculation about what might happen in the future, not what's being proposed tonight. They speculate about midnight construction by a carpenter sneaking in the back door as soon as the building inspector leaves the front. That's not properly before you. Speculation about the house being sold, or speculation about the house being turned into a B&B. Those aren't before you, and those aren't properly considerations about how this house is and will be used by these people, which is what is before you. And I respectfully disagree with the applicant's concerns and think that they are, as perhaps some of you observed early on, they're not the product of this request. David would like to comment also in terms of his personal experience at this property.
Can I just, I'm sorry, I just have one question in this right-of-way issue. Where do you park your cars now?
In the 10-foot wide driveway.
Okay. And you've been parking your cars there for a while?
18 years.
Okay, 18 years, those are your parking spaces?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, go ahead.
No, that's all I had to say. Did you have an add?
I want to thank you for the comments that you shared. I don't have any additional comments. Thank you.
Okay, Attorney McLaughlin, I think you had something further.
Yeah, just to pick up on that last comment, just because the neighbors have permissively let them use the parking for their boat, for their cars, for everything for 18 years, doesn't give them any legal right to go there.
That's not our issue.
Well,
It's not our issue. You can talk about the legal rights, of whether they do or they don't. The no parking signs are enforced by the police department. If they've been parking on your land for 18 years, or someone's land for 18 years, and you haven't said to them, please don't park on our land,
it's not an issue. I mean,
that's what you have to say.
It's 20 years. I've tried those cases.
I
so-
understand that we're not adverse
Well,
possessing this. I
Right,
get-
right. But my point is this, it is your issue because parking's an issue, and they can't, how are they going to, well, first of all, there's a couple of issues here. How are they gonna possibly put parking on this property? They can't, number one. Number two, they have not applied to you folks for a variance.
They don't need a variance.
They do need a variance. They
It's a
have no frontage.
pre-existing, non-conforming structure.
Please, Commissioner, they have no frontage, okay? Their application does not seek a variance from the no frontage requirement, so they're gonna have to come back to you before, well, could you point out to me in the application where they seek a variance for no frontage, Mr. Commissioner?
They asked for a special permit, and that's what we're gonna rule on, sir.
They asked for a special permit
And
for
if
setbacks.
you feel it's not adequate, you will have legal rights and remedies that you can elect to pursue if you want to. But
Well,
we're gonna rule on a special permit. That's
Well-
what's before us.
So you're gonna rule on a special permit.
Right.
Where they're pulling the wool over your eyes.
Sir,
Where,
please,
no,
please.
please, let me
Wait just
finish.
a minute.
Please,
And-
please.
And.
If you have any proof of that, fine, but I don't
I ha-
wanna
I
hear
have- I have
an
to- I have
accusation.
total proof. They have
No, you don't
filed-
have any proof. You've got a lot of accusations and suppositions.
Okay.
The
Let me
plans
show you
are
proof.
submitted, the Board of Health has to make determination of how many bathrooms. And what might happen in the future, I don't know, you don't know.
You don't know and you don't care. What you're telling the
It's not-
community, what you're telling the community
it's out our
is,
purview.
Come in here and
Sir, I
file
would
whatever
suggest-
plans you want.
I would
We don't
suggest you
care
sit
if they
down.
make sense or not.
I'm
We're
gonna
grant you whatever you
motion to
want.
close the public hearing,
Thank you.
please.
Motion so made.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Public hearing's closed. Opposed? No. All right. So, gentlemen, I do not think it's unreasonable to put a condition that we get 2 parking spots on site here, and they can figure out how they do it, don't really care. But I think that is a reasonable condition, because if they do go to litigation and it's found that they can't park in that right-of-way, then they will have no parking.
Right.
And I don't want to approve a special permit where they might have no parking. I think we should require as a condition 2 parking spots on that lot, not in the right-of-way.
I fully understand, I fully agree with the issue with the right-of-way, but what's before us tonight is the fact that they've parked there for 18 years. That's where they park. And
Understood.
that is suitable, it's 100 feet long, I think, and that seems to be suitable for them. So for one, I don't disagree at all with the fact that they should have more parking, but I would suggest if we're gonna do that, it would be in the event they were unable to use that current right-of-way for parking. 'Cause they've been using it for the past 18 years, and no one has interfered with their use.
Okay, I think that's reasonable. Mr. Hedersted?
It's very difficult for me to put conditions on this for the purpose of something that was not proposed, something that was not brought to our attention, something that has now been brought up. And it's my thought, it's been brought up because of a situation in the general neighborhood, not just specifically to this piece of property, or the people who own this house, or the people who use this house, or the right-of-way. It's the problem with the particular area, and other people who are there looks probably in the summertime, are using the street, which we have no control over. Now, by putting something like you're putting in there, you like to put in something about parking in the property, you're conveying a sense that something's wrong. And quite frankly, if something is wrong, it should have been fixed a long time ago. We're not here to fix a problem with parking for a particular piece of property. We're here for the specific reason because they wanted a special permit to put a second floor on the building, and they had to reduce the number of bedrooms because of the requirement for the septic system. And they've got a beautiful home with all kinds of space and probably an inordinate amount of bathrooms, but that's their problem. But we weren't here for that. We were not here for the parking. And I think if you start putting contingencies in here, you are bringing to the forefront the problem of parking, which has not been the subject of this particular hearing. And therefore, you left it open. You've highlighted something that, be it, if they want to take it further, they have a perfect right to do so. But I don't think we should even consider getting involved in it at this point. I don't think it's our problem.
But the Mass General laws say that in granting a special permit, the board can put reasonable conditions on the applicant. And
I
think,
don't believe it's reasonable, sir, but that's...
well, but with Mr. Hilliard's change, maybe mine was unreasonable, but I think he's brought reasonableness to it, that it would, they only have to put the on-site parking if they lost the right to park in the right-of-way, is what Jim was suggesting.
Well, if it was litigated and no one could use that, that would be fine.
Right, and that's what Jim was suggesting.
No one could use it. I mean, no one. Neither property on either side or the people who own the house we're talking
Well,
about.
we just say parking was not permitted.
Right.
Within the right-of-way. Mr. Donahue?
Covered a lot of territory in the last two meetings. We started off with privacy issues. And the privacy issue was actually the most important issue of that last meeting, at least I attended and heard everything. Now we've gone to parking. I understand the issue with parking. I agree with my colleague. For 18 years, they've been parking in that right-of-way. Now the right-of-way is a major issue. With regard to the cars on Braddock, that is an enforcement issue. The signs are there. I understand how you feel with regard to vehicles being parked up on your property. I completely understand that. Sadly, that's fairly common on this small island we live on. I would suggest if it's an enforcement issue, you're gonna have to take it up with our local police department. Beyond that, I move to the chairman.
Okay, well, I think, after all the testimony, my view is that a special permit can be granted, both under our statute, the zoning bylaws, and also under the Gale case. I don't see any substantial detriment to the neighborhood. We've had some people talk about possible decrease in property values. I don't think that's going to be the case, but there's been no evidence. The neighborhood has a number of double-story houses, and I think it will be consistent with the neighborhood, still going to be a residence.
It is.
The Board of Health is going to make a determination on the bathrooms and what may be done in the future. If they're going to be converted to bedrooms, it's going to be an unpermitted, and they're going to have an unpermitted unlawful use. And if a complaint's made, the Board of Health will deal with it. So I will entertain a motion in this case. But I do think we ought to put in that condition that if parking becomes prohibited in the right-of-way, the applicant at that time will have, 90 days or something to put in 2 on-site parking spots, and they can figure out how to do it.
Are you trying... Is there a requirement in our zoning bylaw that every house has to have 2 parking spaces?
Well, it's, Attorney McLaughlin showed us the code here, yeah, residential, we need 2.
Does it have to have 2 or just 1? Or-
Single-family dwellings, 2-family, 2 parking spaces.
We're talking
Two-family.
about,
How about a
a
single
pre-existing non-conforming structure. The question is, when it was built, did it require to have parking? That's the question.
That's the question.
Well, but they're coming, I think we could put it in now, because they're here before us now. So,
No,
yeah, maybe they didn't need it then, but
Special condition, I
Here and
agree.
now.
We can do anything we want on a special
Right.
condition if it's reasonable. And so that's why my suggestion of having it be required in the event they lost the right to park on the right-of-way.
right. Which I think is reasonable.
If no parking was allowed in the right-of-way,
Yes.
regardless of from who,
Yeah, we just say no parking. I agree with that.
I have a,
you want to make the motion?
Go ahead, you can make the motion. Quite frankly, I have a,
I move that the special permit requested under case 218-12 be approved with the condition that in the event there is a no parking edict, legal edict on the right-of-way, then the petitioner would have to supply us with evidence of the fact that they have created 2 parking spaces on the site, on their site.
I think we should put the construction demolition
Then
restriction.
no construction demolition between Memorial Day and Labor Day.
2018 and 2019. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have discussion.
I gotta tell you, quite frankly, I know what you're trying to do, and I agree with what you're trying to do. I agree with it 100%. What I don't like is the fact that we have made a condition that we have no means of enforcing, I don't believe, under the circumstances we find ourselves in. I really don't. But, on the other hand, I think the case deserves a special permit. They've done all they can do for what's in front of them, what has been presented to them, what the neighbors have said. They've done everything they can do, and there's nothing detrimental to the community any more than what is already there. So they meet the Gale case, so that's obvious. I'm just concerned about that provision, and I just express my concern, that's all. Otherwise, I'll agree.
I think the way I look at enforcement on something like this, it's sort of like Title V. You're right, we're not gonna go out there. But when they go to sell it, that's, if this were to occur,
Right.
when they did the title search, they find this decision and that it wasn't met, and it would have to be
Good point.
rectified at that point in time to sell it,
Good point, thank you.
so. All right, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Special permit granted. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
I didn't like those accusations. I just didn't like it at all.
I got hot, yeah.
I came close to telling him to sit.
Whenever you have to come back and apply for the building permit.
Yeah, wow.
Meeting closed?
No, we're still on tape, so let's not discuss till afterwards. Just making a note here. Thanks, that was a difficult case.
Are we still on?
Yes.
I can't comment.
No, we have a couple of more
No, we
motions
don't,
here,
don't
and
shut
then we
us
can
down
go
yet.
off.
We've got a couple of more items. Let me just stamp these in. We're getting near the end, Jack. Okay, so
I love you, I did. He's got my keys up here, let's see.
Okay, let's see, I've got so much paper now, let me find,
You can have this. This is a-
Yeah.
This is getting filled with zoning stuff, so.
Okay,
I like your haircut.
Oh, no, it's too ponytail.
You didn't cut it? I thought you did.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh.
okay, gentlemen, you might remember we had a case, 2018-01, so I guess it was the first case of the year, 205 Forest Street. The house on the corner of Forest and Sisson.
I've been up by that many times.
Have you been by it lately?
Yes.
Have you noticed? I drove by it
Yeah.
last Thursday and I thought, gosh, that looks like more work than I remember was supposed to happen. And 2 days later or whatever, I get an email from Ms. Delaney. And it says, David, I am not sure if you remember Mr. Anthony Crugnali, who came before the board in February, case 2018-01, for second floor addition and renovations to his historic home on Forest Street. The board voted to grant the special permit according to the plans and testimony provided. Since that time, Mr. Crugnali has done a near complete demolition of his property without approval of the Historic Commission, who without a quorum only constructively granted approval for limited changes to the exterior of the first floor and adding the second floor. The commissioner, that is the building commissioner, has halted construction, much due Mr. Crugnali's ire and objection in conference with the chairwoman of the Historic Commission about how to proceed. The building commissioner would like your input as to whether or not Mr. Crugnali needs to revisit the ZBA to adjust his special permit. And then Shayla attached copies of the decision and the minutes that applied. And I wrote back, Shayla, I went by the house last Thursday. I thought the work looked greater than I had remembered what we had approved, but wasn't really sure. Please request Ray Chesley, our building commissioner, to review the work as it now stands against the plans and tell us, the board, whether the current work conforms to them or not. If the work does not conform to the plans submitted by the applicant, please advise him that he will need to submit new plans which show what he is now intending to do and come back to the board with a request for a modification of the special permit. If the board finds that the applicant now needs a variance, he will then have to file a new application requesting a variance and, of course, demonstrate to the board while he qualifies for one. The Historic Commission will have to make its own determination on this matter. We will not be able to hear this matter tonight, Wednesday, since I want it advertised properly if the applicant needs to refile for a hearing. And please forward this to Ray, our building commissioner. And you've got some further info from the Historic Commission.
So, just a little background, I think, from what I've heard, I haven't spoken directly to Mr. Crugnali about it, that he found some deteriorating conditions as he undid walls, or his builders did, and so he just made a choice to move forward. And maybe he didn't understand the limitations of sticking with his special permit from us, or what was going to be approved by the Historic. I believe he does understand that now. He's certainly concerned about having to spend all the extra money and whatever, but he's been halted. He will need to go before Historic next. They can't really bring back what was there, but whatever they will say or do is the next step. And then he's also put forth his application for what he's done, or I think he's going to put that in this coming week, to get a denial permit to come back before the board here to adjust his permit. To the best of my knowledge, that's the plan. So he did go beyond what was part of the special permit. He went beyond the building permit, and he went beyond the approval of the Historic.
So right now, he's shut down, and hopefully he'll stay shut down. Because if he doesn't, I'm going to recommend we put a fine on this guy.
He has to
Because he
cease and
came in, he was
desist.
doing it all himself, remember?
Yeah,
And one of
I
the
let him
things-
sit on that.
Okay, well, one of the
That's what I'm
things he
gonna ask.
sat there and assured us was he was gonna, because Megan Mayhew raised the question about the Historic Commission. He assured us, yes, it was gonna comply, it was historic, he wanted to preserve it, and he wasn't aware what he had to do, and he was, though, gonna contact the Historic Commission and, yeah, get them on board.
Is he a licensed builder?
He says he does this work in Boston.
So he had to,
claims to be.
Refresh my
well, he had to
memory.
have shown his license to the building commissioner
Did
before
this
he got a
property
certificate.
have a pool
Okay.
in
So
the
we're assuming
backyard?
that was,
I don't
But
recall if
he
there was a
ignored the
pool or
building
not, but he
permit, too.
brought up,
So is
and
there a
This
shed in
kind
the
of takes
backyard
really
that was
boils me.
historical?
yeah, well,
I
I don't remember it.
don't
but
believe so.
No?
I'm not sure.
Maybe I'm mixing it up a
I
little.
do
Happened
know-
yesterday, I don't remember it.
Well,
I
yeah,
do know that
wouldn't
he
have-
brought up the fact that it was the house was built, he sat here and said it was built in 1860, and that's what brought Ms. Mayhew to say, oh, isn't that on list somewhere and you have to do something about it? So he was not happy to go before the Historic Commission, and because they didn't have a quorum that night, he was constructively, that's what I was saying, he didn't actually get heard. However, he did apply, and his application showed clearly the pictures and the drawings and the outlines of what he was planning on doing with the second floor only, and the first floor was just gonna get siding and some windows and whatever. So I can understand he opened some things up, didn't look good there, he made some decisions without coming back. So, more likely than not, he will be dealing with Mr. Chesley and whether or not there are gonna be some additional fees assessed, I don't know. But
If he
that's
come-
what
If he does
you're,
come back before us, do we have to have the same board members?
be a new hearing.
It'll
no,
be
I
a
don't
new
believe it's a
hearing.
new
no.
hearing,
Yeah,
he'll,
new
re-
hearing,
he'll
okay.
apply.
Even though it's a
he'll-
modification, we're gonna make them go through the whole
Yeah.
thing again, so whoever is here is here.
Welcome back.
So anyway, I thought
Be
that
missing
was
that night out?
of great interest, because, sometimes people do what we approve, and sometimes nothing ever happens. We've had
Yeah,
a number
yep.
of cases where we've approved whatever, and it never happens.
And if they sit for 2 years, then they have to come back all over,
Yeah.
all new again.
The one I remember in Route 28, just up from gosh, what's the name of it now? The little motel where they converted it to condos there.
Oh, yeah.
Going into
just-
Red
just
River
over the
Beach
river.
there. They have that monster boat, they were gonna change it, they were gonna fix it, they were gonna sell it, and it looks the same as it did. Gosh, this must go back 6, 8 years.
25 years ago.
No, I don't know if you remember, you were on the board, it goes way
Maybe all
back.
the work was inside.
No, anyway, okay,
So one last piece of discussion I sort of briefly discussed with you, that maybe we could bring to the board, is that Ms. Eldridge, who does these wonderful memos from the Board of Health, will be doing these on a regular basis. And so many of the projects that we deal with have issues that they have to comply with the Board of Health. And that it's important to note that the Board of Health looks at these prior to their coming here. They look at them again as they come back to the building department. They get a very close microscopic look by the health department to review, and they apply their standard as to what is a bedroom, what isn't a bedroom, and they make sure that, if there's a nitrogen-sensitive area, that it complies, that it's not up to us here to determine what the Board of Health should or shouldn't do, because she's so good at making detailed memos, it feels as though maybe we ought to make sure that those get in. But I spoke with her briefly, and she's, an excellent, excellent Board of Health director, as was the last one, and they are so good at.
Yeah, good, thanks. And I
And
did ask Shayla from now on, when we get correspondence, if,
I will.
it's in an electronic format, she can forward it to us before the meeting.
Thank you, I got
Because
that.
it's good that Jim reads it into the records of the people, but I kind of like to look at it ahead of time, because some of these issues could have, even though Board of Health could have overlap into what we're considering.
Yeah.
Minutes, did anyone
Minutes.
have anything on the
No.
minutes of our June
They
meeting?
were fine.
I will entertain a motion to approve the
approval.
minutes.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Do we have any additional business? I will entertain a motion to close this meeting.
I will so move that.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting closed.